There's just so many amazing men and women who have pioneered the church in Canada to learn
Yeah,
from.
yeah,
And then there are young men and women. I was saying a lot, but I think you're right that I think there's a little bit of a gap in front of us where we go, hey, who will be the men and women who step up into the season ahead, as people approach retirement and legacy pastors transition out, and what will that baton pass look like? What does that look like for healthy succession? And you've experienced succession from the founding pastor, is that right?
yeah, yeah.
And I would just love a little bit of a window into that experience, and maybe looking back some of the things that you've learned that maybe other people could just benefit from, or maybe just even just describe the experience as people are just trying to look for, like, has anyone else experienced what I'm experiencing in transitions like that?
Yeah, yeah. This is such a big topic. We need another podcast for it. But succession, I think, is on the rise to become one of the top issues in Canada very quickly. And as a younger pastor, you're probably going to go down one or two paths. One is you're going to replant a church, or take a succession on like myself, or you might be like you, Jason, who's going to plant a new church and fresh new vision. They're both difficult challenges. They're different though. And I went through the succession process about 2 years ago, 3 years ago rather. I've been in the job for 2 years now as the lead guy. But before then, it was our senior pastor had pastored the church for 32 years. He founded the
Wow.
church. He's an incredible man of faith and of vision, and he's a good shepherd as well. So, I mean, it's a big shoes to fill. And someone said, don't try to fill the shoes because you never will. Just, put on your own pair. So I've been sort of doing that. But I would say, for, just really broad strokes in terms of, sort of there's the process and the personal. And the personal, I would say the emotional toll it takes on both parties in the church is quite tremendous. And we should not discount that. I would tell people to make sure that you are really investing as much energy into the process, but also investing the same equal energy in terms of spiritual and emotional care for both parties. It's tough. It's tough on the successor. It's tough on the founder as well. And I don't think we probably did enough of that. Typical
Mm,
Asian church, we don't talk a lot about our feelings, and a lot of things are assumed. So it was difficult. And I would say at that time I was about 37 years old, and I remember because of the succession and probably because of where I was in my age, my maturity, I really went through a difficult time. It was, I was depressed at one point. It was so
mm,
tough because, one of the things I can pinpoint it back to is sort of when you're going through a succession process, you're being evaluated. It's
yeah.
mentally draining. You're trying to stays things about why you should lead the church and stay humble. It's kind of a weird thing that you're put through. And so you know what I mean. And I remember going to see a counselor. It got so tough. I went to see a counselor, and he had told me, around 37 age mark, to about 43, he sees so many young guys that are burnt out, they're tired, they're depressed, they're exhausted. And he said, as encouragement, you're no different in that sense, that because I think at that age you spend especially when you're younger, you spend so much energy building up you could call it your career, your ministry, and a lot of it is just your youthful energy, and
Mm,
you're just tired after a while, and you realize your strength alone is not going to cut it, and so you kind of get into this, you spiral out of control. And then on top of that, I had a succession in place, so I really went through kind of a little bit of a nosedive. And thankfully, with prayer and support and even medical help and things like that, it got better. And so I'd say, the personal side, it really, I learned a
mm,
lot about myself, and I'm hopefully
yeah.
a better person than the other end. Process wise, it's difficult for a church. You need a lot of clarity and a lot of boundaries in place. I would say the big principle that I learned is you need more of an overlap between the incoming guy and the outcoming guy. I don't think we had enough. I'd say also afterward the succession happens, you need a lot of space. You need to be able
Mm,
to craft your own ministry and make mistakes, and the church has to be prepared for that. This new guy is not going to be the old guy. He is going to take the church in a new direction. And I would say, from in my case, we're trying to honor the past. We're trying to honor our founders and try to keep that in mind. But we got to take the church in a new direction, especially COVID. And last thing I would say about that is, and I'm really cutting it short, but the succession process should be ideally more of a discipleship process than it is an application process,
Mm,
especially if you're trying to find someone in-house. You know, if you got an in-house guy, someone who's in the church already, and I've had some friends like this, it's really much more of a discipleship process than an evaluation, improvement process. That's a little bit too impersonal for me. I think it's much more about one man or one person discipling another person,
mm,
the role, and to say, encourage them and bless them and say, I pass on what I know and go forward with that knowledge and that understanding versus I've interviewed you, you sound like the right guy, but I really don't know. Please don't mess up my church, so I can really go down that path. And yeah.